At Helena, innovation never stops. On this episode of FieldLink, we catch up with members of the cast from episode 1 from the newly launched Innovation Never Stops video series brought to you by the Helena Products Group. On this podcast, we'll deep dive into how innovative products are developed, formulated, and researched by the team at the Innovation Center in Memphis. Plus, Jody Lawrence from the newly launched FieldLink Market Report joins us from Nashville to discuss the latest news from the government shutdown to the recent global trade discussions and how these two areas are impacting the commodity markets. Stay tuned for this innovative episode of FieldLink. Do you like the commodity market insight brought to you on this podcast? If so, be sure to subscribe for the daily FieldLink Market Report on HelenaAgra.com. This free market report is packed with market insight, trends, charts, and commentary from Jody and Brady Lawrence. Be sure to subscribe today, and don't forget to subscribe for the SMS texting option so you never miss out on critical market news and alerts that impact your farming operation. Go to HelenaAgra.com/FieldLink Market Report and subscribe today. And welcome back to FieldLink. I'm your host, Bill Smith. And on this episode, we're going to recap episode 1 of Innovation Never Stops. And with me today, we've got a wide group here. Guys that were featured in episode 1, our general manager, Patrick Ewan, who's joining us from here in Memphis. Welcome, Patrick.
Hey, good to be here, Bill.
All
Thanks
right.
for having us.
Excellent. Glad to have you here. We're going to talk about the first episode. We just got done previewing, and it's going to be exciting. Also from our laboratory, Trey Baker. Trey, welcome to FieldLink.
Hey, thanks, Bill. Glad to be here.
Good deal. And Dr. Aaron Hertz also joining us here in Memphis, also featured in the research and development side. Aaron, welcome to FieldLink.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, guys. Hey, we just got done watching episode 1, and this has been an exciting project. You guys have been awesome to work with, and I think it's really cool because we had the opportunity to kind of feature what we do here in Memphis at the Helena Products Group and include a lot of the partners and coworkers that we work with come in here day to day and feature some of the really cool things that are happening here in Memphis and how those products that are designed and developed here make their way out to the countryside across the U.S. and beyond. So, Patrick, what's your thought about, you just previewed it. What's your thought about the episode 1?
Bill, you just look back and, I think a lot of what goes on in the ag market, you think about all the customers, you think about all the people out there really wanting to showcase their products. And there's some really good products in the market. And I don't doubt for a second that everybody wants the customer to succeed. But there's a lot of stuff.
Right.
And I think this is really cool for us to be able to share our story. And my hope in it is that we do a good enough job with that people can actually see what we do day to day. That I hope that we can get them not just to use our products, but I want them to come see us, come out here and experience. We want to hear what issues they're facing. Do we have a product that can fit that need today? Or maybe it's something we need to look at, but that's how we work every day. We know we've got a changing market. I know speaking for this group is, we look at change, we look at innovation. And if we do a good job at that, then the results will happen. And most importantly, I think our customers get good results, good performance, and ultimately a good ROI that continues to feed the world.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And you reference, we hope we can inspire folks to get excited to, ask more questions about some of these innovative products. But also, hey, maybe come on down here in Memphis. Join us. Check it out.
Yeah. Think of everything they hear on a day-to-day basis. They come out here and see it, or at least get experience with what we're doing here to want to come see it. Because there's a lot of noise in the marketplace, and we really want them to see the extra mile we go to really develop products that probably the idea came from them.
Yep.
Being the customer. But,
that's right.
But then we've researched it enough to know that we're confident in putting it back out because we want them to grow our business. We have no business without those customers. And if we can make them successful and continue to do that, it just lifts the whole ag economy.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You talked about a lot of these ideas and concepts come from our customers, come from our growers, and we certainly want to come here and check it out, see what we're doing, but bring your challenges, bring your ideas to us. And that way, people like Trey Baker, we'll ask you a little bit about yourself here in a second, but Trey can grab a hold of that in his lab team and say, hey, maybe we can come up with a concept, can't we, Trey? Trey, tell us a little bit about you and what you do here at the Helena Products Group.
I'm the Formulation and Technology Development Manager at HPG. Been with the company a little over 38 years. The focus is in that development of those product concepts to take those product ideas, to take them to commercialization.
Yeah. And you guys get the ability to, grab a hold of some of those products and look at them from the first phase and puts your institutional knowledge, I'll call it, 30, how many years?
38 years.
38 years working in the laboratory at the Helena Products Group. Take the years of knowledge and apply that to what are some practical things that make sense for a grower, right?
Absolutely. And, their problems are our problems, right? As to what Patrick was saying, how we can solve those issues so that the customer can rely on those results that we're going to provide for them.
Yeah, and I do. I think all the time about, one thing I hope that comes across in this is it just doesn't happen in that lab. I mean, there's multiple tries at different things to try to find the ultimate solution. And, every time I go over there, I'm amazed at what they do. And many folks, especially that come up through the sales side, just think that some of those things just happen. And it's a lengthy process, and you've really got to have people coming in every day with new ideas to think about. Hey, it didn't work the first time, but let's try this and let's try this. And, one thing that we really think about over there is, the impossible just takes longer. And you think about that.
Right.
It's easy to quit. Yep. But if you got the right focus and the right people, you're really going to come out the other side with a really good solution. And I know I learn something new every time I go over there.
Yeah, it's awesome to go over there and sit around with Trey and his team. Tell us a little bit about your team. Many of them were featured in episode 1. Many of them are going to be featured throughout the whole series. Let's talk a little bit about your team and really the whole laboratory.
We have 8 staff members, including myself, so we've got 9 total. In the development lab, we have 5 chemists. One of those is a manager of formulation technology. Uh-huh. Been with the company, I think, 13 years.
Wow.
We have a few chemists that have only been on board for a few years, and we have some that have been there for 20 years.
Wow.
And it's a collaborative effort of taking that concept, sitting down with the group and saying, here's our goals and the tasks that we have to go and meet in order to be successful. And to Patrick's point, we don't always get it right the first time.
Sure.
It takes many iterations, and you have to have patience to do that. And but to see the success of a formulation puts a smile on their face because they know what they've had to go through to be able to produce those results.
Right.
And to see that formulation go from a concept to eventually to commercialization, that takes a lot of pride.
And it takes time, doesn't it?
It does take time.
It takes a lot of times, and both of you referenced, we get a lot of misses, but you got to get a lot of misses to hit those home runs. It's a matter, it's like batting average, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll add to what Patrick said is that difficult we can do now, impossible just takes a little longer, right?
That's a good point, yeah. So, Trey, let's talk a little bit about some of those impossible things that you've worked on in your 30-plus years at Helena. Share some insight. What are some of your home runs that you feel you walk away on a day basis and go, man, that really impacted agriculture?
Well, that's a tough one with all the products in the portfolio, It's taking, generally just taking 2 things that normally do not like each other, whether it be in the form that they are,
sure,
and to come up with something where those 2 can be homogeneous. We have that in a bunch of our formulations, and I can't pick one particularly, but those are the difficult situations rather than an EC, emulsifiable concentrate, or a soluble liquid. But to take 2 things that don't like each other, one is light, the other one's going to be very heavy.
Right,
it's water loving, one's oil loving. How do you get that compatibility between those 2?
Kind of creating the magic a little bit, isn't it?
It is. It's actually making that solution to be one phase that's going to be storable, easier to use,
right,
and it's going to take care of the problem because we have a lot of things in our chemistries that don't play well together.
Right. No, absolutely. When I sit back and I think about some of the things that you and your team have developed over the years, I think about products like Grounded, for example, thinking about the millions of acres that have been treated with that product over 27 years or so. That's a lot of acres impacted by you and your team from creating that product.
Yeah, that's a great product. It brings a lot of value to the table. And just for the years of use and the acres that it touches, it's just a testament to what it can do.
What's really cool about that product, and I don't want to call just one product out, but I think about that brand specifically, and I know you were very intimate in the development of that product. It has the unique ability, even today, 27 years later, to bring value and have a huge impact for the grower, but also to the environment. It keeps chemistry where it needs to be, and that's a really important topic today.
Well, think about that product. Think about our industry. You're going out typically, I know, Trey, with pre-emergent herbicides. Think of the time going out to spend to talk with that grower about the pre-emergent herbicide. There's a lot of, I don't know, I'd say that's probably the majority of the conversation in a normal
cycle,
customer
normal
call
year,
to figure out what's the best product to put on that field to control XYZ weeds. And that's great. But think about if that was shifted just a little bit to show how Grounded made that AI perform to its maximum potential. Because typically, Trey, if you come out to a field with you and you see this weed and that weed, I can find you a pre-emergent herbicide. There's a lot of them on the market, some very good ones. But just to getting in front of that to say this is what Grounded does and it's why it makes that product better, that's what I hope comes out of some of these series, Bill, is to really look at the innovation. It's just not your run-of-the-mill adjuvant that's out there. There's been a lot of time. You mentioned 27 years, but over that 27 years, that product has continued to get better, to looking at advancements, looking at different ideas that people bring in. I guess one thing when I think about what we do here is, there's a lot of commonality across the industry, but what I want people to hear, and not just hear, but come see us, is look at the extra steps that we take. Good enough's not good enough for us. It's really, really got to give a different level of control, or it's not going to be a Helena product. We distribute products for a lot of great companies, but to be in a Helena product portfolio, it's got to do something.
It needs to be the best of the best.
It's really got to deliver on what our whole purpose was built on, and that's bringing ultimate value to the customer.
And the way that we try to validate that is working with people like Dr. Aaron Hurt in our research and development side, where you're helping verify how these products that Trey and his team developed with the brand team. And you're kind of the moment of truth here. Dr. Aaron Hurt, tell us a little bit about you before we get into that answer. Tell us a little bit about you and how did you get here?
When I was in school, I think one of the big desires that I had was to impact the grower. Mm-hmm. And in the early days, that was around thinking you have to be an extension to do that, to really work with that customer. Mm-hmm. And through that time in graduate school, I had the opportunity to get introduced to some folks in the industry and understand how they contribute and those products that they're developing and how those are really what that extension agent is using to educate that grower. And so we have a chance to directly impact them with new products and innovations. And so I started off with the basic and then had the opportunity to join Helena and understand a whole nother dynamic to that process and what we can do and what Helena offers. One of the things that video showed me is the culture of Helena and how we innovate. And that it's not just one guy doing that job. It's every single department innovating at a high level and has that same desire to impact that grower in a positive way. And the happy result in that is we're successful because they're successful.
Wow. I think that sums it up really good. In terms of research and development, you and your team are intimate from the beginning concept. You're part of the team along with the chemistry side of the business of how do we take this product, this concept, and bring it forward? How do we ensure that it's meeting the needs on the chemistry side? But then how does it work in the field? Tell us a little bit more about research and development. What's your typical process? How should growers feel about the process and the steps that you're ensuring them that these products go face on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I think one of the things that kind of highlights that is a change that we made in the titles to my team. They're called technical development managers.
Okay.
And what that means is they are very integrated in that entire process on the technical side of development. What that translates to is working with the formulation development team to make sure the AI is the right ratio, that the formulation is optimized for the characteristics of that product so that it's optimized. We need to have good information so that they can develop that product so that it can be effective. So that's just stage one, helping to make sure that we're identifying the right ratios, the right product that'll fit the need, the challenge that we're faced with as a growers coming up to challenges, and we're trying to help them along that line. The next step of that, after the product has been produced and is stable, is to get out there and really test it in the real environment.
Yeah, one thing that I think's really interesting about that I think we do differently. Talk, Aaron, to the point. Yeah, we've got a R&D facility here, and we've got some field trials we deal with. But talk about really how we get down to really statistically evaluate the product and who does that, because we really want a non-biased view. Is that product working better than what's in the industry with what we've done? So talk a little bit to that.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue where I was going next. So that's absolutely right. What we count on is third-party researchers out in the field who are non-biased. Our products are coded, so they don't even know exactly what product's what, whether it's a standard or whether ours. We need true data to say, can we make the claims that we want to make with these products? We know what they should do. Let's see that in the results, and those third-party researchers allow us to do that. And so annually, we're over 500 trials a year, 37 crops, 36 states. So you got a lot of work going across the country to make sure those are tested.
Reach, don't you? I mean,
Absolutely.
It's really, think about that, 36 states and over 500 trials. And how many third party, let's define, some of our listeners may not really know what a third party research is. Can you help us understand that?
Sure. These are master's and PhD level scientists who are educated in how the grower grows a crop. They grow it as a commercial crop would be, and they're testing these products under those environments in their local area. So what that provides for us is a grower-like environment to evaluate these trials with somebody who is educated to know how to evaluate these products, so that the data that we get back is they've learned how to take the bias out of the data as far as how they evaluate, along with that coded product. So there's several layers of, let's keep you honest, but let's see how this product performs.
Right. And I think that's a critical point that our listeners need to hear is these third-party, non-biased researchers are giving us true data back that they don't know. That we could have competitor A, B, and C in there, and we happen to be D, or vice versa. They don't know who's who, which is a good thing. And we're trying to ground truth ourselves before we even bring a product forward throughout the whole system.
Yeah, we don't want somebody to tell us our product's great if it's not. We need to know the truth so we can either rework it back in the formulation lab, or we need to hold and make some adjustments if it's just not there. So I think that process, there's several stages for trade. Sometimes we got to go back to the house and figure out what that issue is with that formulation so that we can see the performance we need to.
And I think that's the neat collaboration where we take, to your point, we may have something coming out of the laboratory. We think this thing's really going to rock the world. We get out into the real world situation and find, oh, wait a minute, this wasn't quite what we thought it would be. And then you get the opportunity to take it back to the laboratory, correct? And say, hey, let's reevaluate this.
Well, I think that's a great point, because you can ask Aaron, Trey both, and many times, everything comes back, gets statistically evaluated, and, some of us want to go, but it's really not fitting the Helena product strategy. Did it give you a bump in performance? Is it statistically different? And yeah, we look at a lot of things other than performance. We try to get a lot of different benefits.
Sure.
And by putting different formulation technologies or different mixtures together, as Trey said, getting one thing that typically doesn't like the other to like one another, to pull out to make a difference, it could be compatibility. It could be less foaming. It could be low odor. But we try to get as many of those things as we can. But yes, to your point, we want it to be appreciable difference in the value that's going to bring for the customer, and sometimes we have to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, you can't win them all, right?
Because we distribute great products, through our distribution business and our retail fronts. But if it's going to have Helena products on it, it's got to do that.
I think having that high standard and that reputation for 50, 60 years in the industry really creates a lot of value. People can have confidence if they know that that product has been produced by the Helena Products Group.
Yeah, I think one other thing you can add to that as far as why we do replicated research is it allows us to make the claims. We're eliminating error that's accounted for that's the reason we replicate trials. And what that does for us is it allows us to be able to say, this is significant. Yeah. This is getting the value we think. It's not noise. It's not a soil environment that's causing one product to look better than another. It's truly adding the value that we're suggesting it does. Right. And my guys put their reputation on the line every year that we put that stamp on that product to say that it performs. So when it goes to our customer, that they have trust in the data that we've generated to say that product performs the way it does.
You know, I think what's really neat, Aaron, about a lot of your team members, they're all PhDs, but they'll pretty much come from the farm. They all have a relationship back to the farm. They've been there, they've done that. And you mentioned something very powerful, in my opinion. They want to put their personal seal of approval on it because very well that product could be going to one of their family's operations, and they take a lot of passion in that. And there's not a lot of researchers out there that probably can say that.
Yeah, Bill, I'd say that is a great point, and I'll take that even a step further. If you think about our locations that are out there, that they live in the communities with these growers, you know, they go to church together, they coach ball together, they're embedded there because they're part of that community, and we're asking them to take these products and recommend them to their customers. We want to make sure we're delivering product that does exactly what the research is telling us it will do. Yeah. And they've got confidence in it. And sometimes, you know, we like growers just to look at it, try it, look at what you're using currently, put this beside it. What do you think? Tell us how it performed. Wow. But that trust factor is huge, and we want trust all the way through the organization down to the retail level, and then ultimately we want the customer to know when he opens that seal on a Helena product, it's going to do what we tell him it's going to do.
You know, Patrick, what's really unique, you know, a lot of our concepts, a lot of them come from growers today and have for many, many years. We also have the other side of the business where, you know, we've got a lot of people knocking on our door from not just down the road, but from around the world, bringing us concepts, bringing us ideas, wanting to partner. Helena Products Group's really shifted here in the last a handful of years rather, with pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I think you can go all the way back down to our interaction with the customer. Mm-hmm. You know, yeah, we do a lot of contracts and stuff, and we deal with a lot of technology providers, but it all starts with that handshake with the customer, and we tell them this is what we're going to do. I think across the board, most customers say, "Yep, Helena said it, they'll do it," and right. That goes a long ways, but then the products get out there, they perform, people see it, they experience. They really not just experience the product, but experience the knowledge that comes with it. And then we're getting into training season now where we bring a lot of customers in. Sure. We have people here, we talk about what we do, we demonstrate it. A lot of these customers have tried our products. They've done what we said they would do. They bring us back more ideas. So it's really a great cycle of overall innovation, you know. So we're learning about what's out there in different situations, the product's performing. We've got good relationships, good knowledge transfer back and forth, and we can come in there and have good ideas. We can put them in the tray and in the lab's hands. Can we formulate it? Does it work? What's the knowledge behind it? What does it do? I mean, it's just, that's one thing I think about when I'm watching this episode is how could we ever really lay that out in a video about what's the life cycle of how that works, from not just the product, but the relationship, the information exchange, and the overall ideas that come in to address issues that these customers that are facing every day. That would be tremendous.
It is huge. And if you think about the life cycle of some of these products, as we referenced, Ground had been around a while, but we keep getting another version, another idea, and we keep building on that and trying to come up with something better, because innovation truly never stops.
It really doesn't. And maybe it's the innovation that somebody that's currently not working with Helena, maybe they see a similar product, but it's made differently. It's bringing a different type of value. And maybe it's just that product. extending a great customer experience when you overlap it with our people that are bringing knowledge about it, that pulls them over to say, hey, I want to buy some of Helena's products.
Sure.
And then we're big into what I call the digital space with data, and we can analyze things. As a matter of fact, Aaron could probably talk to how it helps us here on,
absolutely.
for water management, product performance. But one thing that I hope that comes out of these videos is people can sit back and understand what Helena does. And then the customers who are buying from us can go, yep, I can say that. I can be witness to that. Or maybe it's somebody that hasn't experienced, working with us that maybe says, hey, I'd like to have experience with working with that company to see how those products and overall knowledge relationships can help me on my farm.
Yeah.
That would be a big success for us.
It sure would, and just that experience certainly is different. And Dr. Hurt, we talked just briefly about data. Data is critical from research, but data is critical in our entire business. And, we featured in this video, episode 1, Agri-Intelligence, and I know you work very closely with our agronomy team to ensure that, hey, we're all in line agronomically with some of these products and research and in the laboratory, and of course, Brand is working on that. But what are some things that your team's utilizing data for today to help verify some of the research that you're doing?
Understanding the ground that we're working on and where we put those products in the correct environment to be able to see that value. If you give a grower a field that's perfect, you may not need the products. We need to think carefully about where we put the trials to make sure we're fitting the need. If it's an iron deficient product, we need to make sure it's in an iron deficient environment, right? So that translates across all products. We have to think, we don't want the grower who has every hole filled in his bucket, right? He needs to have something so that, we don't work with products that go everywhere. They are very prescriptive in what they are, and we design those products to fit a need. Yeah. And so if the grower doesn't have the need, we don't need to fill that field with a product that doesn't give them the ROI that they're expecting. One of the things that, for me, thinking about what innovation means and what it does in this, the people in this room and what you saw in that video, I think it's why we're different. And I wanted to go to that way just because as Patrick was talking, I was thinking of it. Because for me, I'm a research guy, so I like to look up things. I want to understand. Yeah. Give me some definitions of what innovation is and what it means and how we integrate to that. And so there was 4 things that grabbed me about innovation that I think I see every day in this building, whether it's in trays or on our end or in Brand, every department. Yep. And one is continual progress. We're always striving for that next thing and understanding the value of each step, and that brings that process forward. Second is that resilience. That impossible takes longer. There's a reason it's said that way. That resilience and adaptability to understanding how we have to do it differently to be successful. You can knock your head on the wall 50 times. You're not going to have success unless you find the door. Right? We have to find that door. And then thirdly is just that culture of curiosity. Nobody sits in their office thinking the same thing every day. We're always looking for that next thing. That's what drives my team, and I love them because they see the same vision that we all do in this room every day, and they want to be better, and they want to make something better. They want to have an impact, and I think that's what drives everybody every day. But it's great to see that on a daily basis as we grow. And then, of course, having a strategic vision. I mean, Patrick, I think, has illustrated well just in this podcast how we have a vision, we have a direction. Sure. Our leadership understands where we need to go, and we're right on board with them.
Yeah, Bill, I'd like to pull back in. I think it goes hand in hand what Aaron's saying, but you had mentioned earlier about people coming in with technology from around the globe. Sure. That's so true, and I sit back and wonder why is that? If you look, we're probably having 220, 230 different companies come through the door wanting to work with us, and I think it really goes back in part what you've just laid out there, Aaron, but also back out to our field. Yeah. And the way we face with customers. And people see that, they hear that, and they want to be part of what Helena's delivering to that customer. And I think that's another reason they're coming through these doors saying, hey, I've got great technology. How can you guys make it better?
Right. Yeah, I think that's an important point for our listeners. These folks aren't coming in just trying to sell something. They're coming in to help them solve something in many cases.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we have the talent pool, the history, the knowledge to do that in many cases.
Yeah, I mean, you think about just Trey mentioned early on with adjuvants, since, going back 50 plus years. I think if you go around the market, not just here in the U.S., but even globally, a lot of the research is done with Helena adjuvants. Why?
Right.
They've proven themselves. If you take biologicals, there's a lot of
It's a
we've
big
all
name
heard
right
it,
now.
all
It's
the
a
big
big term,
biological
yeah.
buzzwords and biostimulants. If you think about Helena when they brought biostimulants to the U.S. market, I don't know what's been 25 plus years.
It's not a new thing in this environment, is it?
It's not at all. But, if you look at the evolution of that, even within our business of what we started with 20 plus years ago and some of the companies' portfolios that we've built, we just haven't stayed in one place. We've continued to innovate and change that product and bring second, third, and fourth generations to really keep up with the change in times,
Sure.
and it's really fit a need for a lot of customers. Sometimes I look at the market and say, well, the U.S. market's finally catching up with us with everybody wanting to bring biologicals,
Yep.
We've been there. We love them. We want to continue to innovate them. I think, we've got some out here now we're working with, but it's just fun to see that. And I think about all the people who came before us that have really given us the opportunity to do what we're doing today.
Right.
It is really special.
Yeah, it's a long legacy out of this group, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at Trey and go back and think about, I tease him. I said, "What did you start when you were in junior high?" But
Yeah, it's one of those things in my time with Helena is to see how the industry has changed dramatically from almost 40 years ago. You think what we were doing back then and what we're doing today, right?
Yeah.
We got to do it better, right? And we got to adapt to that change because if you're not, that's how we can't move forward, right? So we're going back and talking about these technologies, right? The development, taking it from our best of our suppliers. And to me, it's taking those chemistries that are designed to improve the formulations so that we can improve performance, improve stability, improve compatibility. We're trying to provide the consistent results each time. And Aaron's group proves that, right? Based on everything that we do from the field. Like Johnny would say is that's why we don't farm indoor.
That's a good point.
Climatic factors change everything in the field, right? We have to deal with all those. But solving the customer's problems is to the forefront, right? That's what we're here for.
Yeah. And Trey, boy, you're absolutely right. On the front end of the development side, but also after the product's been through the research and it's been proved, it's been on the market, and part of the team at the Helena Products Group in the laboratory, you help us position these products in a good way. And if there ever are issues, we got a staff there to help answer those questions. That's a pretty unique factor in the space that we work in today, isn't it?
It is. With my staff, there's a broad background of what they bring to the table, right? Whether it's on the crop protection or the crop production side. And in their willingness and eagerness to jump in and take care of a problem. We have an issue. It's all hands on deck taking care of the issue. What is our challenge today?
Sure.
Right. What is our challenge tomorrow? To Aaron's point earlier is we don't always get it right. And it may look great.
Sure.
It's stable. We think that we have what it takes to perform right. But once we get that data back do we need to go back to the bench? And how much time does that take? And then making another iteration, the next generation, and then going back out there and doing that again. It takes time.
And one thing I'd add to that is although we're dealing with all these environmental factors, we also are looking at a tank that may have 3, 4, 5 products in it.
Good point.
And that's a whole other complication that his lab can fix. And it may not even be our product that's causing the issue.
We're just
a resource.
But think about this too. You're exactly right. Yeah. There's a team over there that works on just looking at a lot of different tank mixes. Think of all the combinations with all the products that are in the market, and that's what that team does. And there's some mixtures. You said 5, 6 products. There's some that get 8, 9, 10. So how does all those things get in the tank? How's it going to perform? I think that's important. But yet again, that brings good knowledge that we can transfer back to our field-facing colleagues to say, you can be confident that you can put this combination of products together. I mean, that's a lot that goes on over there in the lab as well.
And it does, Patrick, because to your point is that grower is going to make one pass over that field.
Right.
He's going to put everything he can in there to take care of everything he's got going on. Whether or not that's going to be a synergy or is there going to be an antagonism in the tank? Are they compatible? One of the things we may not be able to answer at that point in time is what is the efficacy going to say once you've had all this in the tank? And that's a problem that we have to try to solve as well, right?
Yeah. Wow. Well, guys, I want to first off thank you for being here on this podcast, but also being involved in the Innovation Never Stops series. We cover a lot of turf through the whole series, and this is just episode 1. And what's really neat is the work that you all do and your team, they're going to be featured throughout the whole series. Innovation never stops here at the Helena Products Group. We're going to be going to the field from Louisiana to California, all the way to Idaho and Wisconsin and beyond. We're going to see different growers throughout this episode and some of the challenges that they're faced with. But what's really cool is we're also going to feature some of the solutions that all of you have been a part of in helping deliver and bring to the farm gate to those growers throughout this entire season and throughout this entire series. So again, I want to thank you for joining us here on this first episode, introduction of Innovation Never Stops, brought to you by the Helena Products Group. And welcome back to FieldLink. I'm your host, Bill Smith, and joining us from Nashville, Jody Lawrence. Welcome to FieldLink. Jody, we got a lot going on with the government right now.
Glad to be back, and always appreciate being included in this. And for 2 out of the last 3 Mondays, we've had massive government news. The first one was the trade deal with China, or apparent framework for a trade deal. And then today, just about the same timing, really, it came out late Sunday that the government appears on the verge of getting a Senate vote and then a House vote to reopen. They're not making any promises, but some of the rumors think by the end of the week it will be open. And you look at what happened in Monday's trade. Everybody's probably listening to this on Thursday or Friday morning, but you look at 2% equity market rallies in the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ, all the tech-heavy NASDAQ stocks. And then you look at interest rates, pretty flat. Typically, when we see this, we see interest rates pop up and people going from the safety of bonds into more aggressive risk-related equities. But it's spread across everything, because what we're seeing in a lot of it, and cattle were limit up again today. That has been the craziest market. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But you look at what historically is a very slow time for news outside of the USDA reports. We are getting it fast and furious, and the markets show that in just the day-to-day volatility, which is becoming almost dizzying.
There's a lot happening right now in the market, that's for sure. Certainly much of it's being driven by conversations in Washington and a lot of the trade deals that are taking place too, globally and internationally. And we're starting to see some of those things, appear to be impacting growers in a positive way. So let's break this down a little bit, Jody. We touched on in the opening, we talked about some of the potential deals with China. We're seeing some action there, seeing a few commitments starting to happen, right?
Yeah, it not necessarily the wholesale. China came in and bought all at once the 400 million bushels, the 12 to 15 million metric tons that were allegedly promised in the trade deal. But you are seeing kind of some tangential stuff happen in the markets, because certainly you've had the nearby bean futures rally considerably. You go back 2 weeks to that opening, and you're really talking about quite a bit of action, and positive action, because you look at the jump we still have that gap from the opening on the night of the 24th, and that goes, and we closed that Friday before the trade deal announcement at right around 1060, and last Wednesday's high got all the way to 1137. So you're talking about a 77-cent rally in old crop beans. And I know everybody's going, well, it didn't do me much good because we got rid of beans early. this is incredibly frustrating because not only did the rally, it came at a time when most people had very few beans left, if any, but it also took out any hope for any of the revenue-based insurance setting the fall price in October to help at all. So it's a big rally when you look at the, a 7-8% rally that we just haven't seen those in non-weather events. But what's happened since the end of that week and that high tip, we've basically been stuck in a much higher end of the range on what is now old crop beans in January, where the spread, if you go out to the November 26 contract, you start talking about new crop 26 prices. They've gone up, but certainly far less of a moonshot kind of way. They're up 35 cents as opposed to the 77 in old crop. While corn is up, it's up 8 to 10 higher. Corn has its own dynamic because there's so much of it. And the fact that it was mentioned nowhere in the trade deal is one of the issue, or one of the products ag products that was going to be imported.
Yeah. And as we look into the 26 crop, there's just still a lot of questions out there. The conversations, the energy is positive, but still remains we need to see some orders, don't we, Jody?
Yeah, there's a rug. What I've been telling everybody, and my crystal ball clearly is no better than anybody else's. We just try to put the pieces to the puzzle when they are thrown at us. But if you look at the big picture, and we'll just talk about beans in particular, the big picture on beans is that this 77-cent rally or the 35-cent rally in 26, what you're really looking at is, let's look at the big picture of beans. The big picture of beans is the U.S. crop this Friday, when the USDA finally releases the delayed yield report, is probably going to show a record crop total number of bushels and the final yield be over 53. And if that happens, that just confirms that the U.S. ending stocks are still going to grow this year, regardless of what China, even if they follow through on the 400 million bushels. But you go to the back end of this, the weather conditions to get started in South America, and these are coming from respected analysts who have no reason to just talk up their position, that it's the best start they've seen since before COVID and probably back into 17 and 18. And with their 2 to 3% acreage expansion in South America in both corn or in Brazil in both corn and beans, and Argentina expected to plant about an extra 1.5% this year, that you really have the possibility of them producing an 8 billion bushel plus bean crop added on to our 4 billion, and the world just does not need 12 billion bushels worth of beans, because we had some of the small refinery exemptions, the SREs passed on, some of them applied by the EPA and the USDA, but certainly you don't have that spark that we've been hoping for since it stayed in the big beautiful bill, that we were going to get the return of sustainable aviation fuel and to use those extra 4, 5, 600 million bushels of domestic beans, in the transportation industry and in the energy side of it. So if you add up all the bearish factors that are coming at us and look next year, that just normal rotation inside the U.S., because remember, we planted 98 to 99 million acres of corn, according to the USDA, and about 80, we're going to harvest, about 82, you get to that magic 178 number of beans. Normal rotation, they're going to be about 89 million acres apiece next year. And if we plant 9 million more acres, all of the sudden, there's another 400 to 450 million bushels worth of beans. And 1110 beans does not, it's great because it should motivate some people to start hedging 26. And we've been trying to be aggressive about it because we understand 1110 futures are not 12, $12.50, $13 beans, but they beat the heck out of where we were sitting just 6, 8 weeks ago in old crop beans trading below $10. So there's going to have to be a balance and a big game of chicken if you're going to plant beans because they're going to be more profitable in 26. You're going to have to do something about it now, or you're going to make a decision that comes around to bite you, because beans have what could be the most slippery slope to remain at these, above $11, as opposed to corn staying above, 430 to 440.
It's really a mathematical game. When you look at what's going on in South America in terms of their total acres, and as you mentioned, right now it looks pretty darn good from an environmental weather standpoint. We're just going to have a lot of beans. There's just going to be a lot of inventory, and the demand simply isn't there. So really taking a good look at a position right now is probably a pretty wise move, isn't it?
You have to look at the big picture of what's happened. And hopefully, I know everybody has scars because of what happened in 22 that turned into 23. Prices topped out in June of 23 and haven't looked back since. We're in a situation where margins are so small and the on-farm equity has gone down the last 2.5 years, that if you get profitable levels, you have to start taking advantage of them. And this is no longer a patience wait and see game, because patience, over the last 2.5 years has really, really caused some significant pain, in on-farm income.
Jody, let's jump over to the cattle business. A little while ago, we had a lot of comments about some of the things the administration made in terms of commentary around Argentina beef, and we noticed that the market had a little dive there, but it's kind of rebounded, as you mentioned on your opening here. What are we seeing as it relates to the beef market?
Well, the beef market is the ultimate sideshow, and it has been. And not to diminish anybody in the cattle industry, but when we're talking about the row crops mainly in the newsletter and what we talk about on the podcast, you go over here, and I have begun devoting in the news and notes section an entire paragraph just about cattle each day. And I can't remember the last time I would putting one in a week. And you look at what happened today, you had all of the live cattle, the front 6 months up the 725 limit, and they traded $2 lower to begin. So you have almost a $10 range in cattle market today. You have same with feeders as far as the number of front month contracts. They were up the limit 925. That wow. Just you think I can remember, you think, oh, it'll never, we were always being told it'll never go above 175, it'll never go above this, but we've both been in the industry long enough. I can remember that there were entire years where the price of feeder cattle the whole year's range wasn't $9.25. So it's just an amazing battle between the real fundamentals, which there are the smallest on feed numbers in the United States. If you compare it historically and over 50 years, you look at what happened in the equity indexes today, that they were up so sharply, and the unemployment or the employment numbers are a little softer than you'd like, but a lot of people have more feeling like more job security. And every time you see a big move higher in equities, you see strength in cattle, because what that means is people have more discretionary income, and they are hooked on having beef at home. It's been the pattern since COVID. And it's certainly, you look at an action like we saw today, a perfect example that, one tweet shouldn't spook an entire market. But when, you have to take President Trump seriously, because there are reasons why cattle don't need to be up here. But you certainly, this is the most aggravating part for everybody, seeing these massive swings every day and 2 or 3 times a week to try to position, because it's aggravating for the buyers that I'm talking to when you're trying to restock a herd and buy feeders, and it's aggravating for those guys selling off those cattle they're trying to replace, because if you just sold on the open this morning after a $30 break, and then the next thing you know, it's limit up, you start kicking yourself, because we haven't seen this type of two-directional volatility in the corn or bean markets in years. And I can't even remember a correlation like that.
Yeah, it is amazing to see what's happening in that cattle market. And you're right. Everybody's starting to see, you mentioned the equities sending some light signals that we have a little bit of security. But the demand for protein, specifically beef, is certainly high. And it's fundamental, supply demand. The demand is there. We need that kind of demand for our soybean crop. And boy, we'd really have something cooking, wouldn't we?
Yeah, that would be fantastic if we could switch a few places on the demand or rungs on the demand ladder with beans and corn domestically. And that's just the cycle of it, because you can, technology advancements in cattle industry and in the hog industry are amazing about how much quicker they can gain and retain that weight. But this just highlights really in the bean and corn market, the new genetics and the fact that we are growing leaps and bounds on the ability to produce, as opposed to how we can expand the demand to keep up with it.
Well, Jody, we got some big reports coming up here Friday. As you mentioned, the government hopefully will be open, and we should be getting some reports from the USDA. Any insight there?
Looking at all of the all the private estimates, the StoneX's of the world, all the way through Agri-Resource and the other sources that I look and read, that we are expecting numbers somewhere about half a bushel either side of 183 for corn and 53.5 for beans. We know that the drought in the Midwest and really, the middle of July, and in some places from July 4th on till black layer, really took off the top end expectation for some yield. And we had a lot of rust issues too that have been much harder to quantify. And, how much yield did Iowa, did Missouri, did Southern Illinois, where the rust was the worst. We don't expect the USDA is going to get very aggressive or, overly aggressive here and take it below 182. But not saying that it couldn't be there once everybody gets back to work when we get to the January report. I think what this opens up, everybody in the market's going to breathe a sigh of relief that the government's reopened. We have a November number. There's never a yield update in the December number. That the January report will give us a good firm foundation, positively or negatively, to move forward into 2026 and make some decisions. That this won't be flying in the dark like we, have been for the past 7 weeks.
Well, hopefully that government opens up here in the next weekend. Hopefully it stays open beyond the January talk that's happening out there right now. We're going to certainly learn a lot more here probably by the time this podcast drops. But Jody, I want to thank you for joining us here on this episode of FieldLink. And folks, if you enjoyed listening to Jody, be sure to go to helenaagri.com, check out the FieldLink Market Report, and be sure to request his daily commentary so that you're always in the loop for the latest news and comments around the commodity markets. Thanks for joining us, Jody.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Everybody have a good weekend once you listen to this.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of FieldLink. Be sure to check out the Innovation Never Stops video series on helenaagri.com/Our Advantage Innovation Never Stops to view the 9-part video series. Look for new episodes every other week as we travel across the United States, exploring how innovations from the Helena Products Group impact growers on a daily basis. Remember, at Helena, innovation never stops.